Ethan's jaw dropped. Clara blinked rapidly, confused as she looked between her husband and Daniel. "Ethan, you know this old man?" she asked, eyebrows raised. Daniel let out a quiet sigh and leaned forward slightly. "Old man," he repeated with a soft chuckle. "You certainly didn't call me that when you begged me for a job 5 years ago." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ethan staggered back. His face flushed red like he'd been exposed under a burning spotlight. "Wait, what?" Clara said, turning sharply to him. "You worked for him?" Ethan didn't answer, but Daniel did. "Yes," he said calmly. "Ethan was a junior analyst at my company. A talented one, until he stole confidential files and tried to sell them to a competitor." The crowd turned to Ethan. Clara's jaw dropped. My legs nearly gave out beneath me. "You what?" she yelled, her voice trembling. "No, that's Mom, he's lying," Ethan shouted, pointing a shaking finger at Daniel. But Daniel didn't flinch. He had the calmness of someone who had survived storms far greater than cheap lies. "Your son was fired quietly," Daniel continued. "I didn't report him to the police because of one reason." His eyes shifted to me. "Your mother." My heart skipped a beat. "I knew you," Daniel said gently. "I admired your strength. I respected the kindness you showed everyone at the hospital where you worked, so I chose not to destroy your son's future." Ethan clenched his fists. Clara covered her mouth. "And that's why," Daniel continued, "you two hate me, because you thought I might tell your mother what really happened." "No, that's not—" Ethan tried again, voice cracking, but this time Clara grabbed him by the shoulder. "Is it true? Ethan, answer me." He stayed silent. That silence was louder than a confession. The crowd murmured again. Some stepped away from Ethan. Others stared at him with judgment. I felt my throat tighten. My son, my only son, doing something so terrible and then mocking the man who saved him? Daniel reached for my hand gently, grounding me. I never wanted to expose him. I thought maybe he'd change, mature, grow into a better man. He looked up at Ethan. "But today, after seeing the cruelty in your eyes, the disrespect toward your own mother, I realized keeping your secret was a mistake." Ethan clenched his fists. Clara covered her mouth. "And Clara, since you mocked me, too, you should know something else," he said calmly. She looked up anxiously. "My company didn't just fire Ethan quietly. It also blacklisted him across every major firm in the industry. That's why he's been unemployed for so long." Clara gasped and covered her mouth. Ethan stared at Daniel with hatred, shock, and fear tangled together. "You ruined my life," he shouted. Daniel shook his head. "You ruined your own life, Ethan. I simply let the consequences follow." The wedding guests were silent. Every eye was on my son, a son who had mocked, lied, stolen, and now stood exposed in the most painful moment of his life. But this explosion was just the beginning, because what Daniel revealed next changed everything again. For me, for Ethan, for the entire wedding. Daniel took a slow breath, resting his hands on the arms of his wheelchair. But his eyes, they were sharp, steady, powerful. Not the eyes of a weak old man. Not anymore. "Ethan," he said, "you think I came into your mother's life to replace your father, or to embarrass you. But you're wrong." He looked at me with warmth, and then back at my son with a firmness that froze him. "I came because your mother saved my life. A wave of confusion spread across the guests. What? Ethan whispered. I felt my breath slow, because I knew exactly what story Daniel was about to reveal. The one he had insisted for months should stay private. The one he told only once, with tears in his eyes. Daniel turned slightly toward the crowd so everyone could hear. 3 years ago, he began, I suffered a major heart attack while traveling through the city. I collapsed on the sidewalk. Dozens of people passed by. Some filmed, some stared, but no one helped. Some guests lowered their heads in shame at the idea. Until she came, he said, pointing at me gently. A nurse, on her way home after a long shift. My throat tightened. My eyes watered. She didn't know who I was. She didn't care about my wealth, my company, or my position. She only cared that a human being needed help. He paused, voice softer. She gave me CPR for 20 minutes. 20 minutes, fighting for my life when everyone else had walked away. Murmurs swept through the crowd. Some guests looked at me with new respect, some with tears. Daniel continued, I survived because of her. And after I left the hospital, I tried to find her, not to repay her, not to praise her, but because something inside me changed that day. He swallowed. For the first time in many years, I saw genuine kindness, a heart that cared without expecting anything in return. Clara leaned forward, whispering, So you two met again later? Daniel nodded. Yes. A year later. By fate. She didn't even remember me at first. I was just another patient she had saved. But I remembered her. And I knew right then she was the person I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. I felt my cheeks warm. Tears formed in my eyes. But then Daniel's voice hardened. And Ethan, he said, you mocked her for finding someone old, someone weak. But do you know what your mother did while raising you alone after your father passed? Ethan's eyes dropped. She worked double shifts. She skipped meals so you could eat. She gave up vacations, clothes, comfort, everything, all so you could have a better life. The guests nodded silently. And yet, Daniel said slowly, today, you humiliated her in front of everyone. Ethan took a step back, guilt hurting him like fire. I didn't mean, he started, but Daniel held up a hand. No, you did. There was no anger in his voice, just truth. But here is the part none of you knew, Daniel said, turning toward the crowd. 3 months ago, I sold my company. Gasps erupted. Clara's eyes widened. Ethan froze. I retired. Fully. He rolled his shoulders back slightly, showing surprising strength. And the reason I appear older is because of a temporary medical condition that affected my mobility. Not my mind, not my power, and certainly not my future. Clara blinked. So, you're not broke? Daniel chuckled softly. No, I'm not broke. He motioned toward the side, and suddenly a tall man in a suit stepped forward, one of Daniel's lawyers. In fact, Daniel continued calmly, I am worth more today than I ever was when Ethan worked for me. Ethan's face collapsed into panic. And yet, Daniel said, looking at me, your mother never asked me for a penny. That's why I admire her.
That's why I love her. Clara whispered, "My God." The crowd buzzed again, but Daniel wasn't done. "Now," he said, turning back to Ethan, "there is something else you should know. Something I never planned to reveal." Ethan stiffened. The guests leaned in. Even the priest held his breath. Daniel lifted his chin. "I changed my will 2 weeks ago." Clara's eyes went wide, Ethan's mouth open. "And everything, absolutely everything," he paused, "is going to your mother." Silence. Utter, breathless silence. Ethan's knees nearly buckled. Clara covered her mouth with both hands, and the entire wedding erupted in whispers, gasps, in stunned shock. But Daniel lifted a hand, asking for quiet. "Your behavior today confirmed it. You are not ready for responsibility, not maturity, not compassion, not yet." Ethan trembled. "But the story," Daniel added gently, "is not over yet." Because what he said next was about to shatter Ethan's world completely.
Ethan stood frozen, staring at Daniel like the ground had disappeared beneath his feet, his face twisted between shock, anger, and disbelief. He looked like a child who had suddenly discovered the world wasn't built around him. You can't do that," he whispered, voice cracking. "You can't give everything to her." Daniel tilted his head, calm as a quiet lake. "It's my life's work," he said. "I can give it to whoever I believe deserves it." "But she's my mother," Ethan shouted. "She's supposed to think about me, support me. I'm her son." Daniel's eyes hardened. "And she did, for decades, more than you ever appreciated." Ethan opened his mouth, but for the first time no words came out. Clara stepped away from him slowly, distancing herself inch by inch, like she no longer recognized the man she married. I finally found my voice, soft but steady. "Ethan," I said, "I never wanted more than your happiness, never wanted anything but love from you. But today you embarrassed me in front of the people I love. You hurt a man who has shown me nothing but kindness." He didn't look at me. He couldn't. Daniel continued, "But the will isn't the part that concerns me the most." Ethan's head snapped up. Clara tensed. The crowd leaned closer. "There is something your mother doesn't know," Daniel said quietly. My chest tightened. I turned to him. "What do you mean?" Daniel took a deep breath. "The reason Ethan mocked me so publicly, the reason he tried to humiliate me in front of everyone, wasn't just immaturity." Ethan's eyes widened. "Don't," he whispered. Daniel didn't stop. "It's because he knew who I was the moment he saw me." I blinked. "What? But he recognized me because he has been tracking my life ever since he got fired." My stomach dropped. "Why would he?" Clara stepped forward, tears forming. "Because he told me. Ethan said it. He said he hated you because you were the reason he failed. He said you stole his future." Ethan spun toward her. "Clara, stop!" But she didn't. "He told me," she cried, "that he wished your heart attack had finished you." Gasps erupted across the room. I felt my heart crack in two. My own son, wishing death on a man who had shown me nothing but love? Ethan's face collapsed. "No, Clara, I didn't mean. It was just anger." Daniel raised a hand again, stopping him. "There is more," he said. The guests went silent. "I learned something recently, something Ethan thought I would never discover."
Ethan shook his head violently. "Stop! Please, stop!" Daniel ignored him. After being fired, Ethan forged documents using my company's name. He used them to apply for jobs, loans, and even investments. Clara gasped. "You lied on applications?" Ethan's face melted into panic. His hands shook. He looked like a cornered animal. "Ethan," Daniel continued, "those forged documents have now been brought to my legal team." Ethan clutched his hair. "No, please, no!" "And if I chose to press charges," Daniel added calmly, "you would face prison time." The entire garden went silent. Some guests stepped away, some covered their children's ears, some simply stared, horrified. Ethan fell to his knees. "Please," he whispered. "Daniel, Mom, please don't do this. I'll change. I'll apologize. I'll do anything." He crawled toward my feet, gripping my dress. "Mom, please, don't let him ruin my life. I'm your son." His tears hit the ground. But for the first time in my life, I didn't rush to comfort him, because he had spent years hurting others, lying, manipulating, taking advantage of my love, and now he wanted protection from the consequences he created himself. I felt a painful calm wash over me. "Ethan," I whispered, "you broke my heart long before today." He cried harder. Clara stepped back, disgusted. Daniel tapped his chair arm slowly. "I never wanted to punish you. I only wanted you to grow, to become someone your mother could be proud of." Ethan lowered his head. "But today," Daniel added, "you showed the world who you truly are." Silence fell again, a silence so heavy it felt like the air thickened around us. And then the priest quietly stepped forward. "Shall we continue with the ceremony?" Daniel looked at me gently. "That is for her to decide." Everyone turned toward me. My son sobbed at my feet. My groom waited patiently, kindly. My life stood at a crossroads. My hands were trembling as I stood at the center of the decorated garden, surrounded by friends, relatives, and colleagues. It was my wedding day, a new beginning I had fought hard for. After years of loneliness and healing, I had finally found someone who treated me with respect, kindness, and genuine love. But my son, Ethan, and his wife, Clara, did not share that happiness. They stood near the front row, whispering, smirking, and throwing glances at my soon-to-be husband, Daniel, who was sitting quietly in his wheelchair, hands folded, head slightly lowered. "Mom actually found herself an old man," Ethan whispered loudly enough for half the guests to hear. Clara giggled, covering her mouth dramatically. "Not just old, ancient. She must be desperate." Their laughter cut through me sharper than any blade. This wasn't the first time they had mocked him. Ever since I introduced Daniel to them, they rejected him. Not because he was unkind, but because he was older, humble, and quiet. Nothing like the flashy businessman they imagined for me. But they didn't know the truth. No one did. Daniel looked fragile. He moved slowly. He spoke gently. He lived modestly. But appearances were deceiving, dangerously deceiving. As the ceremony began, the priest asked everyone to rise. I slipped my hand into Daniel's. His skin was warm, his touch steady. "You look beautiful," he whispered. But before the ceremony could continue, Ethan suddenly raised his hand. "Sorry," he said loudly, stepping forward with a mocking smile. "But before we proceed, I want to ask, Mom, are you sure? This man, he looks like he belongs in a hospital, not at a wedding. Guests murmured. Some gasped. I felt my heart burn. Before I could speak, Clara added, "Maybe we should check if he's even conscious. He hasn't moved in 10 minutes. More laughter. I watched Daniel's eyes. Calm, patient, and then I saw something else. A flicker, a spark, a quiet decision. He slowly lifted his head, straightened his back. Every whisper stopped, because the old man wasn't old, not really, and he wasn't weak. He had simply chosen to hide who he truly was until this exact moment. And when he finally looked directly at my son, Ethan stumbled back as if he'd seen a ghost. "Hello, Ethan," Daniel said, voice steady, powerful, nothing like before. "It's been a long time." Ethan's face went pale because he finally recognized him. And the truth behind that recognition was about to ruin everything.